Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 63 of the Titanforge podcast. My name is Ratnos, joined by my friends Tettles and Trell, as always. Hello to both of you.
What up?
What's up, guys?
Yo, yo, yo. Today we have a couple of topics for today. We've got GCD changes, big set of announcements there. A large rollback towards things more being off the GCD, although still a small bite at the abilities that have been put on the GCD in recent years, but still, that's a change that we'll discuss. We've also got changes to potions. A lot of potion-related changes coming into Shadowlands as well. And then finally, we're going to talk about diversity in dungeons. So bringing different classes, bringing specs. What are the kind of mechanics that Blizzard uses to promote this, and what are good goals to have for diversity in dungeons, and what are effective ways of getting there, versus how do we think the things that are currently being done in that department will actually impact the diversity in dungeons. So that's the main kind of gist of our episode this week. It's all these sort of M+ related changes that are going to be taking place as we transition from BFA to Shadowlands.
Yeah, this is just metagame stuff. There's obviously other things that's going to affect the metagame, not just the changes in like class flavor diversity. Like obviously there's gonna be stuff like covenants and I don't know, just general balance tuning too. Like that's always gonna be of effect as well. But this is just some of the things that also go into effect whenever you have to think about like why you would bring one class over another.
Yeah, so definitely there will be some abstracting here. We're not trying to predict the Shadowlands metagame yet. We're just looking at the broad trends.
This is the theory behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And we're also probably going to end up having to speculate about what the hell Blizzard is doing with Mythic Plus, like towards the end of it as well, because these are a lot. Like whenever you start thinking about the changes in isolation, they may not end up even being that big. But whenever you start compounding the changes, you're like, what the hell are they doing?
Yeah, we'll talk about if they're changing philosophy in what like Mythic Plus should be like.
Exactly.
Which,
Yeah.
Seems like they are.
It's hard to tell why, honestly, right now. For me, it's like I haven't really heard any complaints warranting some of these changes or people feeling like they should happen at all. I don't know. Like the potion change to 5 minutes on every consumable is a big thing for me. I don't really get that. I mean, it makes sense from a raid perspective, but
it's good for
I think it's good.
We'll get into this later. I think that they are willing to make things that are a 1% gain for raid, but like a 5% loss for Mythic Plus, and they are willing to make that sacrifice every single time. I think they just care less about Mythic Plus.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's the bigger issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think that things like Mythic Plus, things that were good about Mythic Plus can change into other things that are different, but also good for Mythic Plus.
It's just, exactly. I mean, it's just how it's always been, right? That's more the reason that we're watching it. We're just like, what does this change even for? It's because it's like, well, this is how it's been since the beginning of Legion, and it's like, was this really broken? No. Why are they changing it? I'm not really upset about the 5-minute potion thing. If it was 5 minutes from the beginning, I don't think we would even be having this conversation because it doesn't really matter. But whenever it was previously 1 minute, and now they're just changing it arbitrarily to 5 for what is seemingly a slight gain in raid, but a dramatic loss in Mythic Plus, you just kind of have to question why.
All right, well, I'll be presenting the argument that it is a good change in Mythic Plus as well, but that'll be, we can save that for when we get there. For now, let's talk a little bit about what's been going on in the last week. Trell, you've been busy doing some Tournament Realm BFA keys.
Unlucky.
Yep. I turned on my stream the other day, and people were like, "Wait, what? You're playing BFA?" I was like, "Yeah, only because there's a competition. That's it."
That's unlucky.
So, what is this competition that you were participating in, Trell?
Keystone Masters is an event that's been around for I think like a year and a half now. It started in BFA. It's been growing and growing. It's like an MDI style format competition where teams play each other just like MDI, like best 2 out of 3 matches. But they have slightly different rules. And this time the rules are that teams can't play the same spec in sequential games. Like in the best of 3, you can't play the same spec at all in those 3 games.
Right. Each person can't play the same spec more than once in the best of 3 and in the time trials.
And you can't have duplicate specs in each key either. So like you can't have 2 DKs like a lot of MDI keys had, or 3 hunters like a lot of keys had. So it makes like a lot of class diversity, and it makes creativity an issue And also, it really rewards multi-classing and even multi-rolling. So I get to heal, DPS, and tank this time, which is super fun for me. Like, I think just alone not having the pressure of tanking all three is really fun.
I do generally worry about the ability to be able to like field 3 tanks. Like, so say you don't have 2 tank players on a team, having to field 3 like not terrible tanks for a speedrun competition does feel a bit rough.
That would be tough. Our group does have 3 Prot Warrior players though. And even if we didn't, I would just play 3 different spec tanks.
Yeah, so you'd play like Brewmaster, Prot Warrior, and Vengeance Demon Hunter, but like the difference between Prot Warrior and Vengeance/Brew for speedrun competitions, I feel like it's pretty high, right?
Yeah, it's pretty high. Although some teams are gonna have good times with like Prot Pally and some keys, I feel, from watching their progress.
Yeah, so here's the leaderboards right now for the time trials. Most teams have submitted, or more teams have submitted times in Freehold than the other dungeons. Yeah, there's you at the top in your Mistweaving. But yeah, a lot of different
Mistweaver, by the way.
A lot of different colors here. You can see Rads, for instance, playing Brew in Freehold. That's because he's playing the tank in all 3 dungeons, like you were saying. So he's playing Prot Warrior, Vengeance DH, and Brew in all 3 dungeons, and they have the same person healing in all 3 as well, playing Mistweaver, Resto Druid, and Paladin, and then they have their 3 DPS playing Hunter, Outlaw, and Havoc as 9 of the 8 specs that they're playing. They're just swapping around who's playing each. Whereas other teams come up with different answers for this kind of stuff, right? I think that there's a different kind of pressure that's put on this format, given that it's a Keystone Masters than an MDI. I think that I would be a little bit more worried about this format existing in an MDI setting than in a Keystone Masters setting.
I think so too. I think the MDI could use a little bit of a change. Like, I think they should do no duplicate specs in each run, but they shouldn't do like the new can't play the same spec 3 matches in a row type thing. Like, maybe that's a little too much, but MDI should do like the no duplicate specs, in my opinion, so people can have more fun watching not triple hunter in every key,
Does it really solve anything if you see the exact same comp every single dungeon? Does it really fix anything?
I mean, it does a little bit. Like triple hunter in particular, triple of a certain spec in particular, like it looks bad.
I don't know, man. People just complain the whole entire time. It's like PvP. Like, even if you have 5 different comps that are meta, they're just going to be like, Omega lol, all we see is RMD. Omega lol, all we see is MLD. Omega lol. Fair. This is like, people are just going to complain regardless of what is shown, man.
Either way, I think that this is going to be very fun to watch and is a great format to experiment with in this context.
Yeah, we're having a blast.
Yeah.
I healed an MDI key. We did it in 12 minutes, 30 seconds. I kited the last boss, Awakened Mobs. I pulled 2 harpooners as well in that run and had to kite those, and that was really scary.
Not what you hoped for. That is not it.
But I'm a tank player, so like that was natural for me. Like, kiting is my specialty.
Harpooners like
that. So yeah, that tournament is I think in a couple weekends. I don't actually know when the live portion is, which is a little bit of a problem because I'm casting it and so is Tettles, and Tettles also doesn't know when it is. So
first thing, like whenever we get to a call, is like, Dratus, do you know when this is? Is this next weekend? No. Do you know when it is? No. All right, whatever, man.
They asked me if I was free to cast, and they just said any day, and I was like, yeah, of course I'm free. I'm never busy, man. I'm just sitting here at home, like. So I didn't need to write down when it was.
This is my job. Yes, I'm free.
Yeah. All right. So that's what's going on. I think this is a really exciting thing, and maybe we'll do a full episode on it, either right before or right after the live portion, just talking about.
Probably a segment. Yeah, just talking about. I think like the results of like what we ended up thinking about the format and like what could be improved about MDI, maybe.
Yeah. We also have a poll on the World of Warcraft site. This lets you choose a new mount to be added to the game.
Okay, are there visuals of this? Like,
I couldn't really I think that the visuals aren't yet made. Some of them have like concepting that but yeah, it's hard because like you click on this link and then you get sent to this page, and then you click on this link, and then it takes a really long time to load. They have the description of all of them here. But like, who's got time to read all these paragraphs to figure out what they would look like, right? I want to see pictures. And I don't think there are pictures yet.
They could just sketch some concept art.
Yeah, you click on the 2 links, and they just literally go back and forth to each other. and then here's the voting page. Yeah.
You know, it'd have been funny if they just made a straw poll.
All right, which of these
65,000 votes?
Yeah, I don't think I've voted yet. So, what's the meta for voting here?
I'd say Wandering Ancient.
I've heard that's a popular one.
I think some people want the Caterpillar.
The Caterpillar? Dude, Soaring Spell Tome, is that a book? You get to fly around on a book?
Dude, don't pick the Slime Cat.
No, I'm gonna go for the book. I vote book.
I'm going to continue to just travel form like I always do.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, wait.
No, I think this is dope though. Like
I've got the vote, but just got lobbed back to the
well,
page. It's a little laggy right now.
Blizzard website's not always the most consistent thing I've ever seen, I will admit.
I agree. This is a really cool thing to have, though. This was what I was hoping that Covenant choice would be. I was hoping that it would be like the
you vote on it?
No, I was hoping that like whichever Covenant gets the most renown or whatever, or whatever Covenant accomplishes a certain goal first gets a permanent reward for members of that Covenant, like a mount. Like there's 4 mounts, and only one Covenant actually gets theirs based on.
They've determined that Warfronts were such a great success that they want you to donate renown to each sorting house, and then eventually the sorting house that has the most renown at that lockout, you get to become a member of that Covenant.
Like an Encourage war effort, except you don't have to like lose your stuff to it. It's just the stuff you do anyways, earning the renown, that counts towards it. And then whoever gets to a certain amount first, gets their Covenant pet or mount or whatever, or transmog. I don't know. That's what that was something I thought would be a cool space to take Covenants in. Either way,
I think there could have been many directions.
This vote is cool. It's cool to see some mounts.
Yeah, I like the concept of voting on stuff, especially. It just makes you feel more community driven as a whole.
It almost makes me feel like they're going to listen to feedback, which is awesome.
On the mounts?
In general.
I don't necessarily see a correlation between the two there, but I do think it's on its own merits a good thing.
Yeah, I like the community engagement for real though.
They've also fixed.
Somebody in chat said, "Watch it be a store mount when it's done." I think that they said in the post that you're just giving them out.
Yeah,
if it was a store mount, dude, that would just. I think that would just make so many people mad.
Dude, that would be so funny. They've also fixed some of the socketing stuff in beta. So for those who don't know, there was a brief period of time where you could get like 25 sockets on beta by getting these like triple socket mists and wrath items, and then they would scale up with you to beta dungeons. It wasn't going to be a thing that ever made it to live. It was just because of the way that scaling works on beta to let you test stuff. But now they have fixed it. It says kind of fixed here. Are there ways that it's still broken?
Some items. Okay, you're able to craft some items over level 80. Like some items you cannot get over level 80. But I think even still some of like the Wrath of the Lich King shit you can. But on top of the it has to go over level 80 for the scaling to even be implemented. You have a maximum of 8 sockets that you can have on your character for them to take effect. Otherwise, they just don't work.
Yeah, people are also running around with like 20% increased spell power on their weapons and crap. It's just like so ridiculous. Like 18 socket gamers are still there. It's 20% spell power increase. Like their damage is just amped by like 40% of what it should be still.
Yeah, I wonder what the solution is to this, because like I don't know. It seems like it would be better for everybody if nobody had these power effects on beta, but also, people are going to go get them, right? Like that's if there's a power increase, what we've learned is that players are always going to chase any power increase that they can get in any context, right?
I'm confused. Are bosses undertuned on beta by a lot, like in terms of time to kill? I feel like no boss lasts. I have not seen a boss that lasts over like a minute 30.
I think it's artificially short because one Prideful buff makes the bosses go really quickly.
And the amped gear.
And the gear amp. Like people
and you're never playing Tyrannical as well. You're only doing mortified keys, right?
Yeah, I think I've seen one Tyrannical key.
I played Tyran, and like even still, dude, I feel like dungeon bosses are getting just smoked. People are smoking bosses at like 20 even.
Speaking of Prideful and bosses, there's a tweet from Yoda, Golden Guardian's MDI competitor, that I think is worth discussing briefly as well. pretty scared for what Prideful will do to weekly no lever keys. Some of the bosses are very difficult, which is being hidden by the strategy of acquiring the Prideful buff right before the boss. So if you fail with the buff, you can't get it back, right? And then the boss gets super duper hard.
Yeah.
And
so that's only a couple bosses, and I actually was looking at that as well. And I was sitting here thinking about like what bosses are actually problematic, and it's like Hakar, the Mana Storms, Echelon, and like a Marth, I think are all the ones that I identified as like probably would be problematic if like you don't have the Prideful buff or you don't have Bloodlust or something like that. It's just similar in concept to just not having Bloodlust for early BFA Galvast, where you're just like, all right, I guess we wait 7 minutes.
Yeah, that was JB's reply, I think, to this tweet. Was
or like Vic Goth, and you just like you lose your Bloodlust because you wiped to the boss, and you just like, I guess we just wait.
Yeah, which you can't do. The thing about this though is that you can't just wait for Prideful to come back.
You just go farm up 19% more enemy forces. You wait for your Bloodlust to come back up.
Okay, but it's fundamentally finite, right? Like you can't.
Oh, sure.
You know, you're depending on where you are in the dungeon as well. It might be your last Prideful guy, or you might have used a Prideful guy earlier.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I personally don't think this is like too huge of a problem, because like how high.
I think it's a boss by boss issue, not a.
Yeah, there may of course be overtuned bosses, as always. The odds that they hit all the bosses within the narrow tuning range, such that when you get to high key levels, some don't start getting weird, is pretty low. But like at the end of the day, I don't think that if a weekly no lever becomes impossible when you screw it up, I don't think that's necessarily an awful thing, as long as it doesn't happen for like at the plus 10 level, right?
I think every boss should be doable without Pride buff. Yeah,
I think that's true as well. But like the weekly no lever key level is where you start to get to. That's like levels above the keys that you can
above
time,
cutting
right?
edge.
Yeah. You're trying to do a 31 King's Rest or whatever. I don't think there's a problem if 31 of whatever dungeon in BFA isn't necessarily doable. Obviously, King's Rest, it's scuffed, but like you have the easiest key on a 30, you get the hardest key on a 31. It doesn't need to be doable.
Sure, I don't disagree. I think that it's more of a commentary on some bosses being a little bit wonky. By and large, I think the bosses in Shadowlands are going to be. I think they're quite engaging, and they've taken a good approach for where they want to take the bosses moving into Shadowlands. I think they're all like substantially better than their like BFA's bosses were, but even still, there's still some that are like, holy shit, why is this boss like this?
I feel like they're going to be ending up in a good tuning spot. It feels like without the Pride buff and without damage amps, like just based on my theorycraft and experience, I think they'll be similar to BFA kill times, at least in season 1. And then maybe it might be a little skewed in season 2 if they base boss results off of the Prideful buff, But I think season 1 of Shadowlands will be good, in a good spot so far.
I do worry that the boss aren't gonna live long enough, though.
I do think his tweet has a good point as well about like the boss's difficulty being disguised by the Prideful buff may affect their data on how to tune them and stuff. All right, let's move on to our discussion of the GCD changes and the potion changes. So we'll start with the GCD changes. This was it was kind of known this was coming. There were people who it sort of leaked a couple maybe a day or two before, and there were people in the know who knew for like a week before that GCDs were going to be changed. But here is what has happened. All of these abilities are coming off the GCD. It's roughly 1 per spec, and a couple of specs are getting 2, and a lot of specs got 0, but there are a few specs that are getting more than 1 spell taken off the GCD. Here they are. What do you guys think about this happening?
I think by and large, this is actually a pretty good move in the right direction. I felt like it didn't need to necessarily be targeted at the extent of the offensive CDs that they did pick. But some of them were absolutely, I don't know, I feel like they should have been removed off the GCD. Like notably like Pillar of Frost and stuff like that, where it's like short duration. And it's like a buff to your character, and it's like being on the GCD feels kind of clunky. Stuff like that makes sense. But then other abilities, I didn't fully understand why they were removed from the GCD. And I felt like there would have been better candidates to change instead of them.
Most of these abilities fall into that category of like, you press them, it buffs your character, but it doesn't do anything right away. In fact, all these abilities basically fall into that category. And I think that it definitely felt bad to press a button, and that was supposed to be like, it's supposed to be the most exciting moment of your rotation, right? Is when you press Vendetta or Shadowblades or whatever, or Adrenaline Rush, and your character just does nothing for a global.
Well, an example of that is like, I don't understand why Avenging Wrath and Holy Avenger both came off. I feel like one of them should have been left on, right? I do understand that, like, you probably don't want both of them on the GCD, but having them both be off the GCD is just kind of weird.
Well, it's only Holy Paladin that gets Holy Avenger, right? Is that?
Yes,
or is that...
Holy Avenger is a Holy Paladin talent.
Yeah, I think. I mean,
there's obviously like really good stuff. Like Sweeping Strikes needed to come off, right? Like that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It was terrible as like an on GCD ability. Aspect of the Wild, probably the same thing. But then there's just like all of the Incarns and like Celestial Alignment didn't need to come off. I think that you probably should pick Avenging Wrath or Holy Avenger. Like having both of them come off doesn't make any sense to me either.
I think it's. I mean, like I don't think they were necessarily the most important ones to take off, but I don't think it does anything bad to take them off the GCD.
I feel like everything they did was good on the GCD changes so far. I just feel like they shouldn't have nerfed Encarn at the same time, right? I think it was just coincidence.
So somehow Encarn got fucking trolled, but I mean,
poor druids.
Roar the Protector here, Guardian Druid thing, is the only one on this list that got taken on the GCD, not off the GCD.
Well, that's a PvP talent, so nobody cares about that shit.
Fair. It's kind of feels Guardian Man though.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of the stuff I definitely do agree with, like Shadowblades, like Vendetta. Dark Soul is like a weird one for me because it's a talent, right? Like, I think their general philosophy for like on GCD versus off GCD for cooldowns, like if it's a talent, then typically it will be on the GCD because you're going to end up layering it with the base cooldowns of your kit. Whereas if it's like baseline, typically it'll be off GCD.
Yeah, it's a weird one with Warlock though, because the non-talented ones like Summon Dark Glare, Summon Infernal. First of all, Summon Infernal has a targeting reticle. So,
yeah, true.
That would be a weird one to be off the GCD. I think it makes sense, but it is a little bit of a weird thing. I don't know. For me, what's notable here is the absence of defensive reactive tank buttons. For me, those were and still are the biggest offenders on the GCD. So I'm talking about Frenzied Regeneration, Light of the Protector. Those are the kind of effects that I think most are hurting for being on the GCD.
Innervate. Like, why the hell is Innervate on the GCD?
Yeah, I tweeted about Frenzied Regen, Light of the Protector, and Celestial Brew. After thinking about it a lot, I think that the bigger issue is threat. Like having to choose between keeping aggro or casting Light of the Protector or Celestial Brew is bad. Like if I'm going to lose aggro by pressing my defenses that'll save my life, it kind of sucks. And I think that's just like a threat issue in hindsight. But Frenzied Regen, I think, really should come off the GCD because that is one where you need to keep pressing spells that give you more rage. And instead, you have to choose a GCD to save your life, but also spend your rage that you would need on Iron Fur. So it's like, I just feel like you should be able to thrash and also Frenzied Regen so that you can stay alive and keep threat.
So sometimes I'll hear the argument about like Frenzied Regen versus Deathstrike. For me, I feel like the difference between Frenzied Regen and like Deathstrike is that Frenzy is a hot that's over time, while Deathstrike is immediate. In addition to that, Deathstrike also does a little bit of damage.
Deathstrike is also what Runic Power is for, right? Like you don't use it on other stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas for Guardian, you have active defensive layers that you need to be using your globals to put up as well. So as a Guardian, if you're forced to choose for a certain global to wait on the assumption that you might need to Frenzied Regen, you're hurting your active defense generation. Whereas as a Death Knight, your only thing is Deathstrike, right? Deathstrike is like all you do to stay alive. So
totally
it's okay for that
unrelated.
To be on
totally unrelated, Mark. They need to change Frenzy to be back to like percentage of the damage you've taken over a period of time being frenzied back up, as opposed to this flat 25% amount. Like
definitely, yeah. And if they did that, I could see it being on GCD because it'd be powerful enough to press as a GCD.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
It doesn't make Guardians scale poorly into high level content, right? It's the kind of thing where like you do a heroic dungeon and you're like, okay, this is fine. This is doing a lot of HPS. But then you do a +10 and you're like, all right, well, this heals me for a third of an auto attack. Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely not the same as Deathstrike. Can't just like compare them side by side like that.
Yeah, I think that for me, that's what I'm most hoping will still come off the GCD. I like what they've been doing though. I think that these are good changes to offensive cooldowns. I also love what they did with like with Rune of Power being dropped automatically when you press your major cooldown. as a mage, and then they nerfed its cooldown to compensate after originally removing it as a individually castable ability, which people didn't like, and I think it was reasonable to not like that. They brought it back, and so now you press your big cooldown, Rune automatically drops, and that's one less global you have to worry about. Or for Priest, right, Rapture now is targeted and applies a shield on when you cast it as well. So all of these, I think, are the best ways to attack the GCD in a way that doesn't compromise back the things that Blizzard originally prioritized, which is like they don't want us to macro 30 things together, I guess. So coming up with solutions that avoid getting us back there is important if we want compromise in solutions.
Yeah, I mean, it's Mana Tea and Innervate also probably should absolutely be looked at for healers because pressing as a Moonkin, I don't give a shit, but like pressing Innervate on yourself as a Resto Druid and then you sit there AFK for the full global, you're just like, what the hell? It's like the same with Mana Tea. You press Mana Tea and then you just sit there and you're like, well, I guess I'll just wait.
Yeah, maybe they should come with
like terrible GCD.
Like just have those come with a free Wild Growth / Essence Font cast as well, like on the same global whenever you use it.
That's also an acceptable decision, right?
That's the way to do it without making it so that you need to like macro Mana Tea GCDs to stuff and have a bunch of different, like, to be playing optimally. All right, let's move on to discussion of potions. So we've had a huge set of changes to how potions can work in Mythic Plus. In addition to the 5-minute cooldown and the non-combat cooldown thing that we talked about a little bit when it first happened, but we'll certainly discuss in this section as well. Most potions from previous content will not be coming with us into the Shadowlands. Skystep, Lightfoot, Free Action, Drainic Invis, all the Invis potions, Purification Potion, which I use this expansion. I use this in groups. I've played a lot of groups without poison dispels, and this thing is nice in certain contexts to get around that.
In fact, when you play with a Disc Priest.
Yeah. This is a helpful button.
The sneaking potion, like real underrated one, where it's like, oh, my Druid Stealth is trash. Let me use this 1-minute CD potion as opposed to a 5-minute invisibility.
So all these potions are not going to be usable in Shadowlands because they're being locked to level 50. We are going to have a new suite of Shadowlands potions that are going to cover a lot of these effects, right? There's a Shadowlands version of Invispot, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe so.
There's also a Shadowlands like engineering invisibility as well, which is separate from the invisibility potion.
And there's also the engineering belt stealth. Yeah. Which is that's weird. But there's also a Shadowlands version of Skystep, but it is about half as effective. It is a 70% increase to movement speed rather than a 150% increase.
It's real good value for a 5-minute CD potion right there.
Well,
it's basically a Tiger's Lust that lasts a tiny bit longer. Actually, it might be the same duration. I have to check. But it's a 5-minute cooldown.
It's a 5-minute cooldown, but all the other potions are as well, right? It's not like it's competing with 1-minute cooldown potions. So the decision about which potion to use at a given time, right? Hear me out. I think that before this change, if just Skystep made it through, the correct potion to use in Mythic Plus in almost all cases would have been Skystep, right? Like you would Skystep, and then you would never use another potion because you needed to have Skystep available, right? It was never going to be worth using a damage potion that took you off cooldown or put you on cooldown so you couldn't use Skystep.
Are you saying 5 minute, or are you saying if Skystep was remaining at 1 minute?
No, at 5 minute. At 5 minute.
I think as a tank that is correct. I don't think as a DPS that's correct though.
You think you're chugging DPS potions and taking off your ability to Lightfoot as DPS? I don't know.
More often than not, yeah. I would say so.
I think that would have been incorrect to do. I think that Lightfoot is unbelievably powerful in Mythic Plus, and
I think it depends on the dungeon. Like a lot of times, like your tank is the one who's grouping up mobs with the light. Like think about how you're using the Lightfoot potion. Your tank is literally grouping mobs with the Lightfoot. You're not.
That's fair.
If you're following him around with the Lightfoot, yeah, okay, that makes a lot more sense, right? More often than not, I feel like you're not running together as a 5-person group and then like lining a bunch of mobs around a corner together and then getting them stacked up that way. I feel like it's going to end up being more often than not. I feel like it's like Temple Sethless Molecular Room, for example. Your tank pops a Lightfoot and then just grabs like half the room in one pull. I feel like that's more often than not how Lightfoot is used.
So now with it down to 70%, do you think that tanks will continue to pump it or pop it in a situation like Miraculous Room?
I don't think tanks push it all now.
No, I think we'll still do it. We just can't do it as often, which sucks. Like it's actually so much more important than it looks to be. Like it's not just convenient. It's a lot of times you want to pull the same type of mobs near the same moment so that they all spell queue all their spells at the same time. So you can stop them with AoE stops at the same time. And so the point of light footing to pull a big pack, even if they're kind of close together, is that you pull them all at the exact same time, just about.
It does make some classes worse though, at like substantially worse at being able to AoE pull mobs like Prot Paladin and Blood Death Knight and stuff, versus like Vengeance and Brew, which are able to kind of get away without even using a Lightfoot potion a lot of times.
Yeah, having natural speed is actually going to be a big plus to those classes now. I do think that's a good thing, at least because of this change. Like the classes that are faster than others are going to have a natural advantage of grouping big pulls, whereas DK is just kind of screwed. Although if they're Night Fade DK, they have some movement speed increase, which is nice.
Yeah, you teleport around. Cute fox teleport. Yeah. True. And they will be Night Fade DKs as well. So it'll be okay there. Yeah, I mean, I feel like this potion is still a competitive potion against the other offerings. Like I feel like a 70% 8-second, like a slightly stronger Tiger's Lust is a valuable competitor with the other potion offerings.
I think they missed the mark on potions as a whole. Whenever I thought they were going to move them to 5 minutes, I thought that they were actually going to make them impactful, but potions still suck.
Yeah, I feel like they actually made them less impactful and longer CD.
Potions now just like suck even more, which I'm just like, what the hell how has this happened?
I mean, I don't feel like they have to be like. I feel like there's going to be much more decision making surrounding potion use in Mythic Plus for the most part. Like,
I think you just get away without using them as much. I think you just get away without using them at all now.
You think you're just not going to use potions? I mean, I feel like having access to like 5 half Lightfoots in a dungeon and figuring out where to use them is
I mean, you're
a skill that will be tested.
You're gonna save some time, yeah. I mean, that will save you some time. That's no argument here. You have to argue like the argument is how much time does it really realistically save you, and that's whenever you look at stuff like that, I'm like, oh, it's probably not worth.
So okay, you're making like an economic argument that you just don't want to use the gold on it.
It doesn't matter. Like the gain is not worth like not even economically. It's just like how much are you actually going to save over using 5 Lightfoots over the course of the whole entire dungeon as a party? Like how much realistic time can you even possibly save with that?
Well, in the case of MDI, several minutes, because like in a dungeon like Shrine where it's a like 14-15 minute run kind of, you skyce up literally 6 times as a full group in that dungeon. And with the current changes, you'd be able to do it twice, I think, before you get to the last boss. And that's actually a huge time step. Like some of those pulls, you literally have to sky step to get through to Shadow Meld, to group them up before everything starts casting.
Sure. And I'm not arguing if it's mandatory. Like it's mandatory, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It really enables stuff. Like 150% movement speed is actually really cool and can enable you to do extra things, which I'm going to miss personally, but I can see the benefits as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what you mentioned as a downside, Tettles, of like, being screwed if you're a DK or whatever, like, I think that does bring mobility back to being something that is actually different between specs, right? Like if every spec just has a Lightfoot every minute, then there is no mobile or immobile tanks, right? They're all just full speed all the time. So I think it's reasonable to make that something that is different between tank specs. Anyways, my perspective on this is that the longer cooldown, not having it be a combat lock in particular, those are great changes to potions because they move them away from being just something that you automatically do every pull, and they make it instead something that you choose where you're going to use them throughout a dungeon, and that's relevant.
I don't think they made them strong enough to where you use like it actually matters though.
But it's like it's free, right? Like you're going to use them because it's not like there's an opportunity cost besides gold, which who cares?
Okay, so say all 5 people use a DPS potion, that saves you 2 seconds worth of damage across the whole entire timer. You have that 6 times in a dungeon, like 12. Okay, bro, like 12 seconds gained. All right, does that really feel like you're actually doing anything? No.
I don't know. I mean, is that if you're going to use it to shave time off of a dungeon, if you would use 30 potions to save, to save time in BFA dungeon, wouldn't you do the same ratio at a lower amount in Shadowlands as well?
I mean, I don't use them in BFA dungeons for the exact same reason.
Okay,
But
a lot of people do potion in BFA dungeons, though. That's very common.
All right, so be it. Like I just feel like generally.
Wait, do you not use potions in BFA dungeons?
I do sometimes. Not as often as most people.
But like one of the things in BFA dungeons is that by potioning you're putting yourself on the combat CD, right? Like
I do in dungeons that matter. Infrequently do I do it in dungeons that I don't care about.
I even do it in like farm keys just so I don't lose the habit of not potioning. Like I don't want to not min-max my class, you know.
It's like
that's a whole different thing,
but I feel like more often than not you're not ever very infrequently you're going to be depleting a key over potioning.
Oh, of course not, but you could save a few seconds.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is cool. I agree that it would be cool to see.
I think you just play better is normally my philosophy on it.
I mean, playing better is using all the things that you can, though. Like, if somebody comes to you with 12 seconds on a silver platter, and you're just like, no, thank you, I don't want that. That's not playing well. That's playing badly.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's my take on it as well.
All right. Let's move on to our tip of the week segment. My tip of the week is that, and I saw this on Reddit earlier today, but I've known this and used this before. Your Hearthstone is not actually tied to like an inn or whatever. It's tied to the exact position and facing of your character when you bound your Hearthstone. So it can be useful to make sure that you're facing the exit when you bind your Hearthstone, so that when you hearth, you just walk straight ahead and you don't have to turn, you don't have to bonk into a wall once you hearth. Particularly if you're trying to do some degenerate min-maxing and you want to like bind your Hearthstone to Plunder Harbor or to the Hosen Throne to get into the Motherlode or Siege, you know, aim yourself so that you're facing towards that dungeon and not going to bonk into a wall when you hearth. That's a second or two saved there. But in general, I think if you've got a bunch of guys, like a bunch of alts that you're setting all their hearts to the same spot, you know, aim them all at the door, and that way you don't have to like your muscle memory. You know, you save a couple seconds here or there. That's my tip of the week. Trell, what's yours?
We were hold on. We were talking about this tip of the week while you were deafened, whenever you were doing the pre-show stuff, and it literally on our show notes it just says Hearthstone, and I go, Trell, what does he mean in his tip of the week where he just says Hearthstone? Thank you for that that grand enlightening point, Dryden.
It's a tip of the week. It's a tip. It was the week. Here it was.
Hey, I think a little min-maxy thing for a tip is great. It's perfect. Mine has to do with Shadowlands dungeons. There's a boss in Sanguine Depths called Grand Proctor Borrelia, I think. She's the third boss. She's kind of like Kragmon. There's a soak mechanic that people need to soak. Instead of crushing maggots on the ground, you're picking up orbs to heal or damage reduction yourself for the upcoming big AoE hit. And so you want to divide yourself into quadrants. I have a screenshot if you want to pull it up, Drenos.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah.
You want to divide yourself into quadrants. Instead of the healer not soaking, you want the tank to not soak, though. So the tank should go get like 2 orbs really far away from the boss so that everyone else can get the convenient ones. And everyone else in the group should aim to get 3 orbs each. So like 60% DR from the big hit coming. Each orb is 20% DR. You may want to min-max that to like get 4 orbs on one player if they're more squishy at some point in the dungeon meta. But it's kind of like Kragmon. So you soak the orbs, you get hit for a lot of damage from the AoE, and then there's a Kragmon tantrum after that as well. So it's a hard to heal boss. You have to have a lot of coordination. But if you're just plugging this, I would just recommend putting down a couple markers and telling people to generally soak in those areas.
Yeah. That fight, I do worry that one may end up hitting one-shot territory, because right now, like on a 15, if you have 1 orb, you're able to live, but it's like with very minimal amounts of HP. But with dungeon scaling just exponentially working how it is, I do worry that dungeon is going to get one-shotty towards the end of the expansion.
How many orbs do we get among the party to divide?
There's 15 total orbs, so you could get 3 on each player, but I think you want to just get like 1 or 2 as a tank, depending on the group.
Yeah, I mean, you could do like 2 on your tank, 1 DPS player immunes, and then you have 3 players that get to split they get like 5 each.
4
each.
Yeah.
That feels like a scalable strategy into really high keys, even if they start getting pretty one-shotty, as long as you have some immunes.
The orbs are spread out really far, so I don't know how you would be able to get 5.
Okay.
Yeah, it's actually kind of challenging just to get 3 sometimes if you're a low mobility class.
They're very far.
Well, that's where the potion of the Psychopomp Speed comes in. Pop that, go and pick up some, go and vacuum up some orbs.
What
Yeah.
next to the Dread? So you're gonna Stampede Roar?
You just do it. You do it the one time where you're unlucky or you don't have your speed, your sprint up or whatever. Yep.
And if you're a DK, you stack Wraithwalk.
If you're a DK, you use your cute fox form. That's easy.
You're right. Blue D&D, baby. Get the fox out.
All right, Tettles, you have for us a clip of the week. Is this one we should have sound for or not?
No, we do not need sound for this.
All right, let's go.
So I think, was it last week that I was talking about the Halls of Atonement bats doing stupid amounts of damage?
Yes, I think so.
I think it may have been last week and maybe 2 weeks ago. We have 3 bats on this boss. We killed this boss in sub 1 minute.
This is a 20, right?
Yeah, this is a 20.
It doesn't look like they're on the damage meters for the player that's controlling them, but they're just destroying this boss. Like, look at its health just get chunked.
Yeah, this is a 25-second clip, and the boss takes more than half its health in the duration of this clip. You can actually see their auto attacks chunking the boss. There.
Yes.
That is wild. And a +20 key. I mean, because they scale up with key level, right? So.
Yep. It's the only Covenant specific dungeon buff that scales with key level currently.
And that is Venthyr. And it's stackable too, is the notable thing, right? Like, it's not just one Venthyr you'd want for Halls of Atonement, right?
Well, no, you only need one.
Oh, can one Venthyr get all of those bats?
Yeah, one Venthyr got all those bats.
Okay.
So the way the tank player did it there is he went around the dungeon, tagged 3 of the gargoyles. He didn't press his Venthyr ability yet. He brought all 3 gargoyles to the boss. And then once the boss was engaged, he pressed his Venthyr ability before he got owned by the 3 gargoyles.
Okay.
And then they turned friendly and killed the boss.
Okay.
So once you actually activate them, they try to just like stand still. So you got to do it at a time where they're near a enemy target.
Okay. All right.
It's lovely.
That's some mechanics. That's what we like to see. All right.
Also,
good.
I mean, sorry, there's just like a bunch of weird stuff in Shadowlands dungeons. The second boss of Necrotic Wake, you can just tank her next to the angel, and she auto attacks it for like 15% of the boss's health.
Per melee.
Just
per melee. Yeah. It's like this neutral mob. It's like this NPC mob, and she just, for some reason, if you get the boss close enough, she'll just start swinging at it and just insta kills the boss for you.
Yeah, these dungeons are so exploitable right now. It's actually they got to fix a lot of stuff before this goes live.
I'm sure it's all on the list. Like, I'm sure they know about it. There's no way that a dungeon would just exist in a bugged state for an entire expansion. That would be completely ridiculous.
Yeah, that would be so insane.
I'm looking at you, Lord Stormsong.
All right.
Looking at you, Lord Stormsong. No more fucking jacuzzis to be taken today.
Let us move on to our main topic, which is diversity, class diversity in dungeons, and all this kind of utility. So it's kind of similar to the potions and changes and stuff we were talking about earlier, but
yeah,
it's another set of changes that we have, which is like all of these scroll stuff is no longer exists, right? You can't get a battle shout scroll. You just can get battle shout. You still can't get a demon hunter scroll. You also can't get a battle res, an engineering battle res anymore. That's gone. And drums have been nerfed from 25 to 15%, whereas regular bloodlust is still 30%. So they have gone from being 5/6 as effective as lust down to being 1/2 as effective as lust, which is certainly a sizable nerf there as well. It's worth noting that the magnitude of fortitude, battle shout, and arcane intellect have also been nerfed from 10% to 5%. So the difference between having and not having one of these classes has gone from a 3% attack power difference between the scroll and no scroll and BFA to a 5% difference in Shadowlands. The huge outliers here on this list, IMO, are still Chaos Brand and Mystic Touch, which somehow didn't get nerfed despite already being more impactful.
They are actually.
They're
3%.
Oh,
they're 3%?
Yeah, oops. They got knocked down from 3. They got knocked down.
All right. Well, both the earlier Wowhead articles and mine missed that. I should edit that.
The big outlier here is the battle res.
Okay. Oopsie. All right. So battle res. Yes, that one is. There's no engineering version. Now, to be fair, the engineering version did suck compared to regular battle res, right? Like,
yeah.
my hunter died last night resing our healer in one of our.
Oh, did it backfire? Did it backfire?
It backfired and killed him.
Was it in Freehold?
It was in.
Okay.
Motherload.
Was it Corey?
Actually, yeah. Wait, no. Corey was playing. I think it was Shrine. Either way, Corey died resing someone else.
Good.
Yeah, he deserves that. Yeah, it's a weird, but it is a consistent direction that they're taking all these things, right? They're taking all of these things in the direction of these class-specific buffs are not going to have profession alternatives or weaker alternatives that you can get into any group. If you want these effects, you need to bring one of these class. We'll leave the discussion about how this impacts raid. I think it's mostly less impactful for raid directly. I mean, it is relevant for raid. It does mean that you still need exactly one demon hunter in every raid comp at least, or you need at least one demon hunter, at least one of all these things in every raid comp. And I do think
people, it's easy to field, right?
It's easier to have it happen, although it does really suck when it doesn't. Like, if you're just looking at your roster and you're like, all right, well, we don't have a demon hunter here. We could literally find a demon hunter that does a third or 2/3 as much damage as any of the other players on our roster, and they would be a DPS increase for us to add to our list. Like, that does feel weird and bad, but it is minor in terms of, like, most guilds don't run into this problem because it's 20 people and there's 12 classes. There's a pretty good chance you'll have one of each, just if you randomly rolled each slot. But yeah, let's talk about how this is going to impact Mythic Plus. So, do you guys feel like the 5% buffs that we were discussing are particularly relevant for Mythic Plus composition? Like, do you think that Battle Shout, Arcane Intellect, Fortitude are things that will have a huge impact on M Plus comps, or even an impact at all?
5% buffs? No. I don't think that as a whole those things are going to be critical for timing a key. And the reason for that being is that more often than not, I feel like you're not missing a key, especially early on in the expansion. You're not going to miss a key's timer because you're lacking DPS. More often than not, you can end up like making a lot more optimizations in terms of like your routing, your pathing, general play, avoiding deaths, doing a lot of these other more involved decisions for how you're going to be able to time a key, to where these buffs, where it's like the 5% attack power, the 5% AI, even the 5% fort, like, wouldn't affect you as much.
I think it's also like each person is responsible for more damage in an M plus key than they are in a raid, right? Like, if you go to a raid, you're responsible. Each person needs to do 5% of the damage in the raid. So a 5% attack power buff is like massive, right? That 5% on 20 people can be almost your entire contribution to the raid damage in one go. But in a 5-person setting, you're only giving attack power to 5 people. So that is,
3 DPS, 1 tank, and 1 healer, notably as well. Like, you're not even giving it to, like,
the ratios are similar in raid as well, but I'm abstracting that to make the point. You're responsible as a single person is responsible for 20% of the damage in Mythic Plus, right? Yeah. So you're the fraction of your damage that can be accounted for purely by these passive buffs, these binary 5% buffs, is a lot smaller, and it's a lot less. It's a lot less impossible to compete with, right? It's so impossible to compete with Chaos Brand in a raid setting.
In a raid, yeah.
If you're trying to get a raid spot from a Demon Hunter and you're not a Demon Hunter, it is impossible to do. Like, there's no reasonable 2 players where I would choose somebody on a Warrior over somebody on a Demon Hunter if I already had a Warrior and I didn't have a Demon Hunter. But in Mythic Plus, that's not true. In Mythic Plus, it's a lot. Each person is responsible for so much more of the dungeon success that these 5% buffs are a lot more marginal.
Also, a lot of times there's like mixed damage, not even just like from like a spec to spec thing, but like you may have like 1 pure caster, and then you may have 2 like full like melee DPS where they only benefit from attack power and the other guy only benefits from AI. So like, sure, like if you had both, it would be ideal, but even then, it's like
it's also just not feasible to get all of these buffs into one party, right? Like, it's not going to happen. It's not like you can do that without making serious sacrifices, which you can in a raid setting, right? In a raid setting, you can fit all of these buffs in to your group without making any big sacrifices. But in an M plus setting, you only get 5 classes, and there's like a lot of different things you want to bring. You're gonna have to pick and choose. What it does mean is, like, yeah, probably the second Warrior is quite a bit worse than the first one, and like you're probably not going to want to bring a double. You're probably going to want to bring like 5 different specs, but even then, these 5% buffs can be overcome if an overtuned spec exists, and that they absolutely will be. The specs have been overtuned by much more than 5%, especially in M plus.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the bigger issue is the battle res, right?
Yeah. So
that's definitely the one to talk about.
5% buffs. We've kind of. I think all three of us agree are mostly not hugely going to impact.
Same with the Mystic Touch and Chaos Brand. I feel like fall in the exact same category.
Yeah, and M+.
Oh yeah, they're even less impactful now. Yeah, I think that's we all agree on that.
I think they're about on par as the others, but yeah, maybe a little, because like
Lust and Battle Res, I guess, are the next, right?
Right. So let's start by talking about Battle Res. This is one that friend of the show Elsmere wrote a massive post actually on competitive WoW here. Huge wall of text that took me a couple hours to get through this thing, but is basically an argument in favor of
a couple hours.
Has anybody checked on him? Like, does he still have all of his hair intact? Like, did he tear it out writing this post?
It's good though. I mean, I upvoted this thing. This is a large argument in favor of why engineering battle res facilitates the existence of diversity in Mythic Plus, and I think it's definitely worth a read for if you're somebody who doesn't like the engineering res, for instance, existing and wants to see res restricted. I think that
probably play a battle res class.
Yeah, I mean, well, playing without a battle res, it really does become apparent. Like, if you are 4 people in a group that exists that doesn't have a battle res, the 5th slot, it is almost impossible to justify bringing a non-B-res spec over a B-res one in that spot, right? And this has happened in BFA, for instance. If you were trying to play a priest instead of a druid or whatever in a healer spot, when Blood DK wasn't already in the group or whatever, so late season 1, early season 2 type space, if there's not another battle res spec that is in a certain group and you're trying to get into that group and you don't have one, it's not happening, right? It's so bad to not have a battle res in the Mythic Plus group. The engineering res, even with the engineering res, it was a big drawback to these compositions that didn't have one, but like the engineering res made it feasible. Without it, I do not believe that you will see a group in the like top 50 that doesn't have a battle res in Shadowlands. I don't think it'll happen.
I think we may end up entering double battle res, triple battle res meta again because of it. Like the druid DK, warlock druid, kind of bullshit where you have like one of each. You probably like, I don't know, maybe you'll have like double druid or something like that, but I do suspect we'll enter like the triple battle res meta again.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like single res in Shadowlands is going to be the level of riskiness that no res is in BFA, right? Where it's like some groups will get away with it and try it, but like that's a notable drawback to the composition is that if that person dies, it's over.
Single res is cursed. Yeah, it's one singular battle res is cursed unless it's on like your tank, because more often than not, if your tank dies, you're not recovering anyways. Like, so you can kind of be okay, but even then,
Trell, you look like you've got some thoughts brewing there.
Yeah, I don't know. I think tanks dying, if it's a pretty high skill group, if the tank dies, oftentimes none of my group even dies these days. Like, everyone's pretty good at surviving and having a plan to get out of there while I either run back or I get rezzed. I think that having just one B-res in the group will be the play. I don't know about like 2 to 3 like in Legion, unless those classes are meta anyway, which they'll just be brought because they're good damage, you know.
Right. Yeah. My perspective is it looks like that's going to be the meta in Shadowlands anyway. Like Druid and Warlock, Death Knight, those are 3 classes with uncapped DPS specs. Like,
hold on, Moonkin got nerfed. Leave me alone,
Moonkin
bro.
did get nerfed back to the ground.
Moonkin got fucking gutted like into the ground. Like, it's doing 20% lower DPS than other classes right now, which
God, you love to hear it. You love to hear it so much.
That's so sad. I feel so bad for my Moonkin friends, man.
They had a couple months of beta where they were OP, man. They're set for another expansion,
dude. My last peak was in last beta as well, where I had fucking uncapped exponential AOE scaling. So
yeah, Lunar Shrapnel like V1. Yeah, still though, I think like the Death Knights and the Warlocks seem like kind of owner specs anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think at least one of those makes it into the meta for sure.
So
Resto Druid also looks stupid.
Yeah. So
Druid. Yeah.
If there are multiple battle res specs in the meta, like particularly if there's 2 or 3 battle res specs that are very popular, it doesn't really matter that the engineering res doesn't exist, right? Because if you are trying to play as a Holy Paladin and there's already a Death Knight and a Warlock in the group, you don't have a drawback, right? It's not a huge deal to not have a B-res. But if the only battle res spec that's in the meta is Resto Druid, and you are trying to play any other healer, it's not going to happen. It's the existence of that is going to prevent you from being able to do competitive keys as one of those other healers. Will it affect more casual groups? It's not going to affect your ability to like do a weekly key, I don't think, but I think that it will still.
I think it
feel bad to wipe. You're going to wipe more.
I think it increases like the propensity of you like walking out of a key if you make a mistake, as opposed to like being able to recover in some form or fashion, which I'm not super hot on. I mean, generally, for my general thoughts on diversity in dungeons, I would prefer dungeons to be more accessible than less accessible. Especially whenever you're talking about like class specific utility, I feel like there should be like more often than not some like pretty watered down version of it, just to where you're not feeling substantially hampered. In that sense, it's like Shroud, like the polarizing utility, Shroud, Battle Res, even getting into some of it where it's like, I think that more often than not, dispels should be less class based and more often than not magic based, because class specific flavor for dispels that are important is kind of annoying for a large majority of the healers or class that just don't have dispel.
Agreed. I was just thinking about the removal of NG Res is kind of like the removal of pylons from Legion to BFA. Failure detection pylons allowed you to put it down right before the last person in your group died, or like stick it on your healer's body so they can res in the spot they died and kind of save the group a lot of run back time. Or you could use it strategically on like a big skip where the whole group dies, but dies on the detection pylon and then rests there. And then they got rid of that. People were sad about it because that was a fun mechanic. And they added NG Res, which kind of did the same thing. It allowed you to keep going through the dungeon and not run back, or recover mid-fight if you didn't have a B-Res. And now we're losing that too. I really hope
Detection pylon was OP though.
Yeah, I think it was a little overpowered. It was pretty fun though.
Yeah, NG Res definitely hit a lower power level.
Yeah. You just didn't use battle res with the detection pylon though. You're like, all right, we send it. You're like, you would shroud into full failure detection pylon skip kind of shit, and it was like, all right, we just go.
Yeah, I'm just sad to see these things go, because like all these things bring higher quality of life to dungeons. And if we're just going to go into Shadowlands without either of those things, it just means we're going to run back more. And especially if there's no checkpoints, looking at you, Mists of Tyrna Scythe, that's a long freaking run back.
Oh, Mists of Tyrna Scythe is not even the worst, bro.
Wait, which one's the worst?
It has to be Plaguefall.
Oh, Plaguefall, yeah, that's pretty bad.
Plaguefall start of entrance to like Icus room, like it has to be longer than Mists of Tyrna Scythe. But yeah, rough shit.
Yeah, I think the dispels is a good point as well, because like it is pretty binary if you have a.
I think that there is some like merit in class specific dispels being good and even encouraged in some spots, but then once you have them that are like they're virtually enforced on some fights, like Echelon, you either have to have a decurse, the ability to be able to remove a stun, or like a freedom. And like if you don't have any of those things, so say you're playing with a priest healer and then you're playing a comp that doesn't have like a stun removal or a decurse, like what the hell are you actually supposed to do on the Echelon? I just think that if you have a 5-person group, more often than not, your ability to be able to do the dungeon should not be hampered by stupid stuff.
Yeah, I think that's fair as well. Like people always talk about like, I don't know, a common counter argument is that you want to have spec, utility be valuable. But I think that you're absolutely right that like if I form a group of 5 people, most of the time, like unless we're doing something stupid, unless I'm like, all right, let's play a 5 Death Knight comp, like we should be able to handle these bosses without it being a huge nightmare, right? And so like the thing you mentioned, like it sounds like there's a lot of things. You listed a lot of different ways to deal with Echelon's ability, but it's very easy to just have that priest healer and not have any of those things, right? And so like those specs then get hugely hurt and need to do all this extra work to build a comp around them compared to
exactly.
The rest of Druid that has everything, right? And doesn't care.
And then like, so say you are playing a priest healer and that's like your main, and that's all you really ever want to play. Like, how the hell are you ever supposed to go into Halls of Atonement, right? I guess the answer is don't, or you make sure that you have a decurse.
You have to hunt for an elemental shaman to go into that dungeon with, or a ret paladin to bring those effects. And like, those specs should have uses for their decurse and for their freedom and stuff. But like, I feel like there's a way you can design these where it's like it's like the fear, the awakened mobs, right? Where fear dispels, curse dispels, immune taunts, all these different effects were useful and made those fights easier, but they didn't take them from like this is going to be a huge pain point in the dungeon to this is doable. They instead took it from like this is doable to all right, we have a sweet way of handling this that makes it like better, even great.
Because the crash on an echelon one-shots you. Like that,
right.
I guess that's the important distinction, is that like if you do not get a decurse, then you're not able to move out of his crash down at all, meaning that you're going to get hit by it, meaning you're going to die.
Right, whereas compared to like the fear circles, where like a tremor totem or a mass dispel are huge, they're both like mass dispel in particular. That's incredibly powerful, and it feels great to have that. But if you don't have it, you don't die, right? It just is worse, and that's where I think I think that you could design it in such a way that every group gets access to whatever they need for the dungeon, but you can also just make it so that the stuff that you need for the dungeon isn't stuff that makes it go from not doable to doable, just stuff that makes it go from doable to, you have the secret key for this area that makes it, great.
I'm thinking about Echelon, like there is actually some secondary counterplay. Like you can use Kyrian Potion or the curse removal 5-minute CD potion, I think. So you could technically, if you're Kyrian, you could do it twice in that fight. But if you're any other Covenant, you could do it once with the 5-minute CD potion. I think that's okay, maybe, as counterplay, in addition to
3 times in a row, you just get battle rest, I guess.
Yeah, like I think there should be one more way to take care of that mechanic, just so there's some more counterplay for groups that get RNG'd like that. But honestly, it's not like the worst thing, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think the potions covering that...
worst.
I think that, honestly, like a potion covering that kind of niche is good as long as it's not something that like chain targets you. Having your potion CD be the answer for like, all right, we don't have a shaman in this group. We need a potion. We need to use our potion, like one of our potions on this mechanic. That solves it for me.
So yeah, but for me, I think more often than not, things that decrease accessibility in dungeons like Dispel Flavor or like Battle Res should normally be universal. But if they're absolutely going in this way, I feel like they should remove, like they have already decided that this is the way that the expansion is going to shape out. They should remove drums, I feel like.
Yeah, so right now drums are 15% haste and lust is 30 on beta.
Yes.
On live, it's 25 and 30. So drums is almost as good as lust. In beta, it's half as good. And you're saying that it should just be axed.
Gone. Yeah. Like you should be, like, if you want a bloodlust effect, you should be forced to have a class that has it.
How powerful is bloodlust compared to like the 5% scrolls, do you think? Or
in raid, probably pretty powerful.
Yeah, certainly in raid you need a you'll
in dungeons, not so much, because more often than not, bloodlust doesn't enable something in dungeons. And you end up just bloodlusting on bosses anyways, just to make the bosses slightly easier, because that's more efficient in terms of like per point of haste for damage. And like, as long as you're not using it in order to be able to actually pull off a pull in some form or fashion, bloodlust is not normally needed. It is nice to have, though.
I'm trying to think. There's some situations where lust can like make or break a run. Like Shadow Azul with a group that's not fitted for that kind of fight. Lust can really carry you through that.
There's niche situations.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to
Vic Goth's first platform with tentacle, like beating a checkpoint on tentacles is also like important. Like, there's obviously going to be these situations where you need it, or like it would be greatly advantageous. But
I think that it is more impactful than the 5% buffs in Mythic Plus. Like, I think that if somebody came to you and offered you on the one hand a Battle Shout and on the other hand Bloodlust, I think you would take the Bloodlust, assuming there wasn't drums around. And I think I don't think you'd really ever pick the 5% buff. I think you'd always have access to the.
I agree.
To the Bloodlust. The question is how much better. Like, is the difference between drums and Bloodlust? Like, is Bloodlust twice as good as a 5% buff? Because then the difference between drums and a real Bloodlust is the same as the difference between no Battle Shout and Battle Shout, right?
Yeah, kind of.
I
don't know.
If you really squinted it and just kind of super abstract it,
then I don't know, man. Are drums actually going to help you overcome the problem that you're having anyway?
Do drums classify? Like, will a 15% haste buff function in the same spots that the 30% one does to let you do stuff? I don't know. I think that nerfed drums it's tough, because like on the other hand, given all these others,
they've just stripped away all the consumables. Like, why don't you just nerf Bloodlust, remove drums?
What will leatherworkers have then, Tettles? Think of the leatherworkers.
I don't know. What do inscriptionists have, man? They literally removed every single scroll from the game. What do inscriptionists even craft anymore?
You make your legendaries. Yeah.
Yeah, the legendary crafting stuff. They're actually pretty useful.
You're right. That's okay. What do blacksmiths craft?
Weapons.
Well, actually, honestly, every armor crafting profession is going to be really useful at first because all the legendaries require like a base piece from that certain armor type.
Okay, you're right. but
yeah, I guess
the armor is like really stupid.
I'm mostly just parroting a YouTube comment that I see a lot that talks about the sanctity of professions.
He's memeing, and I'm like, I don't know, also
taking the bait.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I do think that going from 0 to 15 or 15 to 0 on the drums, I don't know what I think.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I'm trying to figure out my opinion on it too. I want to say that groups that don't have lust would probably be like the 15 weekly run groups because they'll just have a scuffed comp, on average. I don't think they would really need a full lust for those runs unless there's some like really, really difficult damage check even on that level. Like Elderly Axa and Underrot in Season 1 was a huge DPS check, even for, I think, lower runs.
I feel like more often than not, there are metas where you don't have a lust class, though.
Yeah, although Mage is bringing now Arcane Intellect and Lust. Whew.
And Mage looks pretty required.
That's a lot of utility.
And a Curse Dispel.
Yeah. This is
Sayonara, Moonkin. You've been out global fucking utility.
And a huge slow for the tank because Frost is looking pretty good. I don't know, yeah, Mage is looking solid in general.
Okay, so new meta prediction. We lob the Boomkin, and we're now on like Blood DK, Resto Druid, Warlock, Rogue, Frost Mage.
Frost Mage, yep, exactly.
Yeah, that's
the Moonkin has been cursed to do 20% less damage than all other classes, and now the Mage is going to step in and take its place. You don't need the Frost Mage though. You have the Sacrilash.
Oh, true, but still. The Warlock can equip a different legendary, and your Frost Mage can go ham.
Yeah,
true.
Also, I think lots of specs just have big slows now, like Rogues. Any spec Rogues have Crippling Poison now. Frost Mages, Warlocks with the slow again. Fury Warriors, I think, still have Piercing Howl. There's actually quite a few big slows back.
D&D.
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
The thing is that's on a competitive talent row, though, with the...
What's on the row?
I think
Grip of the Damned and... I thought it was Asphyxiate was on that row.
It depends on which spec you're playing, but I think for Blood, it's Wraithwalk on that row, but I'm actually not 100% sure.
I see. All right, I'll take your word for it. I'm not a Blood DK expert. I just thought it was on the Asphyxiate row.
I don't know. I just play it in raids, man. I
know. It's fine. I don't play it at all, so you're ahead of me.
Dude, Blood DK in raids is actually so fun, though. I'm glad that it's looking like it's going to be the best, or a good raid tank choice for me. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's close out our main topic with final thoughts. I don't know. I think I.
Do you want to read that?
In bold in our show notes, Tettles has put "what the" and then a bad word, and then is Blizzard doing to M+? Question mark, question mark, question mark. So I guess it's a little bit of a loaded question, but what do you think the kind of synthesis of all these different changes is going to have in terms of like impact in M+?
Trell, you want to start?
I feel like it's going to be like kind of invisible. Like it's not going to be really noticeable because all these things are just gone and people are just going to play without them and be like, oh, I missed this, but we're still going to be playing new content. And so it's still going to be enjoyable to an extent, I don't know. It's hard to say. I personally miss gear swapping from Legion still, but I don't like rant about it every day, I guess.
I think there's going to be a lot of friction because it's the way that Mythic Plus has always been, and I'm not 100% sure why they're changing it because these changes aren't innately for the better of dungeons as they have previously have been.
What do you mean it's the way it's always been? Like the battle res existing from engineering battle res, I guess with plus detection pylon is kind of the way it's always been, but like potions and all these different things.
I was more referring to the, like, I don't know, the utility and the potions and stuff like that. It's been like that for a while at this point, right?
I think the speed pots will be the biggest hit for me. I've played Mythic Plus with 1 minute 150% speed pots the entire time I played Mythic Plus, and so that's going away, and I will definitely miss that. I'll probably complain about that a lot, actually.
Comps have always been like very specific anyways, and I suspect that they will probably remain that way regardless of like what's happening, right? There's always going to be a meta, and it's just
yes. So
does this actually decrease accessibility? My initial inclination is to say yes, but I can't prove it until I end up seeing it, and I'm able to look back in retrospect.
My take is that, yeah, first of all, the top level composition, the best comp or whatever, that always has and always will exist. And
yes,
it's pretty, it kind of doesn't really matter why it exists that way. For me, the important thing is like, how scuffed is your comp if you deviate from that, right? And I believe that all of these changes are pretty much fine on that department, with the exception of the Battle Res one. The Battle Res one means that if you deviate from a top comp by removing a Battle Res from it, if you switch your Resto Druid into a Resto Shaman or into a Holy Priest or whatever, you are taking a huge chunk out of your group's viability.
You know what I think they should do? They should revert a change that they made back in Legion, which made Battle Res's share cooldown, and instead they should revert it back to where all Battle Reses were unique.
That'd be even worse. The concept change.
When that was the case, I remember watching a group do Vault of the Wardens in Legion, and they used all 4 battle reses, all their unique battle reses, like at the same time.
Judging me
on the last boss of Vault.
Can you stop judging my groups? I mean, I played 5 battle res comps back then. That shit was OP.
Yeah, you could like use 5 B reses on the first boss, and then 5 B reses on the last boss, and that's 10 total reses. Whereas BFA, you can use like 4 total probably.
The comp was double Moonkin, Resto Druid, Warlock, Blood Decay. I don't know. Just have 5 battle reses, man.
I don't think that's the answer. I think that just some kind of NG res alternative is a really important stabilizer to allow you, like, to make it so that comps that are slightly worse can still play the game, which I think is the important thing.
Speculatory wise, why do you think that they're doing this stuff? Do you think that they hope it increases diversity and like makes you feel better about like the stuff you do bring? Or?
I don't think it's a diversity decision. I think that the thing they're trying to maximize is specs feeling unique and classes feeling like they bring something special, right? And like if you bring Battle Shout but there's a scroll available that does pretty much the same thing, it doesn't really feel like you're bringing anything. So I think that's why they want these changes, because they don't want there to be like profession knockoffs of your class utility, right?
Yeah, I can see that too. That's the only reason I can come up with as well. Like the speed pod nerf is to increase the viability of fast specs like Brewmaster and Vengeance as opposed to DK and Paladin. I don't know. That's the only thing I can see, but I still don't like it.
Right.
Well, there's always going to be friction with change.
Well, and us as players generally would prefer for things like comp diversity and accessibility to be priorities instead of stuff like classes feeling, unique. But that is definitely a priority for them.
Of bringing the player. I would like to bring my friends over having to actually field a comp that is meta, even in my lower level keys that I want to do because I don't know how to play a dungeon without this.
But like I really do think there's compromise that's reachable here. I think that the only one of these that is going to cause like actual problem for M+ of all the stuff we discussed today is the B-Res thing. I think if there's just, as long as there's a way to make it so that I can play my comp and not have to find a Resto Druid as a healer, and I can just play with whatever with the other 5 specs as well.
Dratnus, you don't understand me though. What happens after they remove Battle Res? Then what unique utility does Druid have? This is terrible.
And Resto Druid, it could easily be Blood Decay, it could be Warlock, or like I said, if multiple of those specs are viable, it won't actually be a problem. But whenever the metagame gets to a point such that there is only like one viable Battle Res spec, that is when it becomes impossible to compete with that spec and be like close to as good. Which to me, that's the important thing, is that being close to as good as the top you should be able to do like within a key level or two of those teams and be able to play the game.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a reasonable comp, but it's like you don't have to have the best, but you have to have something that's like not
Yeah, like I like being able to just like tune into like mode stream and watch him doing high keys and stuff, and like I like being able to zip around in different comps and see, like there have been times in WoW's history where you can hop between Twitch streams and see like the same level keys being done by like rainbows different of comps, right? Like completely different lists. And I think that the battle res change is, depending on the metagame, is the most in danger of restricting that and making it homogenizing top teams. And so I think that's, for me, that's something that it'll be negative as a viewing experience. It'll be negative to go around on Twitch and see that, and it'll be negative as a playing experience. So I hope that they can come up with something to fix that one. The other stuff I'm okay with an M+. All right, let us move on to our question and answer segment. But first, we get to thank all of our supporters over at patreon.com for supporting our show every week. They are Paul of US Proudmore, Anastasia is in Horrific Visions Purgatory, soon to be Torghast Purgatory, I'm sure. Fly Like a Boomkin. I said delete yourself, not delete speed pots. Rip speed pots. Just Gopher. Some kid that is enjoying all this content Tettles has been pumping out. Tettles, the daily YouTube videoer. King of Skills, Zuko, Ja. Drunk Sweet from Legion of Lemmings, Argent Donnie U. I Wish I Was Dratnos' Dino Pillow. Chromed, Seraphicus, Trekkie, the Marshare, Regulus, Nevernude, Chewy, Dexterous, Revendus, This is a tongue twister. Dexterous, Revendreths, Assassin, Trespasses, Necrolords, Obelisk Silently, or Dratnos. That's from the that's from the video, the Afterlife Maldraxxus. Did you guys watch that?
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
I love that animated. I love all their animated shorts they do.
To me, the only thing was I just watched the Bastion one like the day before or whatever, and the Bastion one was like, it makes all the ones that follow it not as impressive, because the Bastion one was so good.
I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
Tettle's just
what
he avoids. You haven't watched you should watch the. They're on the World of Warcraft YouTube. They're like the animated shorts. They're like 6 minutes, and it's good. It's good lore content. You'll enjoy it.
Tell us first the no potions, now the no animated shorts.
Yeah,
come on, man.
Lufer potions aren't that big of a deal. Leave me alone.
Lufer of US Forum Rest Accord. BFA is so bad. Our Keys Discord turned into a Fast and Furious fan club.
Yep, that's that shit. I'd rather watch Fast and Furious than do BFA keys at this point.
I mean, it's 2 years old. It's 2 years old. The expansion's,
Then I tune into twitch.tv/Trellski and he's fucking in
Freehold
Keystone Masters prison. Yeah.
You mean prison? It's fun as hell.
Yeah. Come on, Tettles. Stop telling people not to have fun. Mugatu, Sen of US Kill Jaden, Dazboot, better Mage Leap than Tal. Brought to you by Dratnos the Excel Wizard, now Microsoft Paint Wizard, by the way. Brad Ceratops, Gino the 24th best DH on Thrall, Necris. Will ever Blizzard care about balance and spec identity? I think we covered some of those issues today. Shadow Priest can pump.
Yes.
If you chain pull, just give them a chance. Shadow Priest, a spec we didn't mention in the meta there, but definitely one that I could see being an owner spec in Shadowlands as well.
Well, especially with their 3-second lift the player into the air and then drift them to you after that.
So bad. Whoever thought that they should change Leap of Faith like that needs to just
not. That's insane, right?
It was like, we need to nerf Leap of Faith. Like, Leap of Faith is cool. It did not need to be nerfed, man. It was good.
Somebody was
watching to be able to troll my friends 3 GCDs instead of 1 GCD.
Somebody was watching me stream, and I was playing with the Shadow Priest and tanking some really trap bear keys the other day, and was screaming for a grip, and they decided, they're like, no, you can't get away that fast.
EV, Frosty K, New Meta, Sinmora, Nevuk. I don't know if I mentioned some of those names. I may have already mentioned. I kind of lost my place, but it may have been a free double mention. I think it's time to admit Gino is better at Mythic Plus than me. Take light of the Protector and Rage Regen off the GCD. Woe Bonesy No Verse, No Trick, Vamp of Stone Rage. I unscheduled Tettle's Flame. Vesuvius and Glade need to choose a main. Avid Naked PvPer. Diemat. Sync of an Oceanic Podling. Excuse me, a little burp there. Congrats on 12 out of 12M. Liability US Thrall H. Big grats. Well played. Congrats on your cutting edge. Heltari, Ishiyu. Supra, Hanny is going to pump in Shadowlands. That is our list of patrons. Thank you all for the support. Let us know. Let us know if you want your name changed, of course, in the Discord channel. And let's move on to our
shout out to our
Q&A
patrons, always making funny content for us.
Oh, I think the bot is also. I think the bot got kind of scuffed midweek. Okay, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, the like so that we use a Patreon Discord bot to automate roles, and at some point it got scuffed, and I haven't looked to see if it's unscuffed yet, but hopefully it's a temporary thing. It's like just not giving the right roles out to people. I hope it's been fixed by now, though. Yeah, did you see if it had been, Tettles?
I saw that I can never tell. Like there's some turnover on a week-to-week basis, and it's really hard for me to tell like what's natural and what's not with the robot itself. But
okay,
if you're having problems with the bot not assigning you a role, you can ping either Dratnos, Trell, or myself, and we should be able to assign you the correct role. Just make sure that you include what role you need.
One problem is the bot had been unassigning the roles when I last did it. But what I'll do is ping me if you hear this from now and you still don't have the right rank. I'll just make some other ranks that can see the same channels, and the bot doesn't touch those ones. And then
the bot was unassigning the roles too.
Yeah, because the bot manages them.
Yeah, it was
right?
like going on and off.
Yeah, so. But I've come up with a way around that. So if you're still having if you still don't have the right role, let me know. At me in the Discord, and I will sort it out. Let's move on to our Q&A segment, though. Our first question comes from @BigBenBurnett, who asks on Twitter, I'd like to hear a discussion of the pros and cons of Shroud still being a thing in M+. We didn't really cover this too much in our main topic, but Shroud is absolutely up there with honestly with effects like Battle Res in terms of how...
I think Shroud has decent coverage by especially since you have options of like engineering stealth and invisibility potion. I think that Shroud, like, you do have decent alternatives for that now.
Right, there is a scuffed version of Shroud available in the like even just death skips often are scuffed versions of Shroud, and so I think that it's okay. I think Shroud's like I would still, if I was in charge, I would still nerf Shroud more compared to the state that it's in right now. Like I'd up the cooldown or something on it, but Shroud is fun. It is fun to have good Shrouds and routes. Like I have a lot of fun coming up with those things. I think it adds a lot of creativity to pathing. I just, I feel like the fact that it's locked to one class out of 12 is it is still, I'd rather make it so that the other groups that don't have rogues can still have that fun as well.
So the pros are that it increases diversity in pathing, and it allows you to actually have more unique routing whenever you're going through a dungeon, and increases the strategy that you're able to achieve with the Shroud or with invisibility potions, with a lot of those things. The con is that most other invisibility effects, and the biggest drawback that I normally see is that most other invisibility effects are not able to be mounted.
Yeah.
While using it. And like, I don't know. I don't mind using the 5-minute potion. I don't mind using the engineering like invis. I think the issue of not being able to be like mounted and actually achieve like a long enough run sometimes. Look at Ataldazar's Volcall run as an example. Just not being able to even like make that run without a mount is problematic in of itself, I think.
Yeah, I think it is cool that there is the Shroud effect in M+. I do agree, though, that like the penalty for not having a rogue should be smaller in the pathing department.
True, I agree with that.
All right, Squishy asks, why hasn't Blizzard changed bolstering or necrotic? And yeah, there's a huge long list of affixes that have gotten changed going into Shadowlands. It's almost all of them. Bolstering and necrotic are two kind of conspicuous absences from that list. Why do you guys think that they are, as of yet, unchanged on beta?
I don't know. I think those are obviously like the two least outplayable affixes. I think that's right. Either way, they're like the worst two affixes for us players, I think, in terms of like doing the dungeons at a normal pace, or like doing the normal pulls. Bolstering really changes dungeons and also slows you down kind of by default in most cases. And some dungeons, like, eventually people figure out how to really make bolstering not slow you down very much at all. But necrotic and bolstering are like the two that I think most people would like to see go, or at least nerfed in some fashion, right?
Part of the problem too is that you can't even test bolstering on beta right now, because like neutral mobs and shit are still like bolstering elites and crap, and you're like,
I hope that's not making it to live, man. I hate.
There are like a spawned mob, like the
Yeah.
necromancers in Necrotic Wake spawn mobs, and those mobs are doing on death affixes like once they get despawned by the necromancer and stuff, and it's like there's a lot of stuff that's
that's
I
not
don't
going
want
to
to say clearly unintended, but it's not. The precedent is more often than not that will not be like that.
Yeah, last time we saw it was like Junkyard, where those no meeting slimes, those didn't end up doing 7 bolsters.
But that didn't end up. Yeah, exactly.
But they did in PTR, so I hope that will happen as well. But I'm also surprised that Necrotic and Bolstering haven't seen changes as well. I think that both of them could use maybe more of a rework than others, but maybe it's still to come. There's maybe still time for that kind of stuff in beta, but I think there's not really.
I was actually talking to Squishy about this last night, and he pitched the argument that bolstering should be purgeable, which would be like almost the inverse of how raging effects end up working out, right? Where it's like, you need a soothe for raging, you can purge bolstering. The alternative one that I said is that you just make it 15-second duration. He said, then you just kite for 15 seconds. It's like, you already do that with raging once the mobs drop below 30% HP.
Yeah, I think we talked about that before too, or making bolstering only amp their damage instead of their health as well.
I like that. Or, what if you just what if we target capped bolstering to
5 targets per
or 5 stacks on a mob. Mobs can't go above 5 stacks of bolstering because, like, I don't know. I mean that
yeah, we're target kept at 5. Why can't the mobs be kept at 5?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Dude, they should do that in Raid. Dude, imagine just N'Zoth is target capped at 5 and he's just like, he casts Evoke Anguish and only 5 people get it. He's like, I hate this.
He's like, oh, Blizzard nerfed me.
Yeah.
How would you guys feel if bolstering is purgeable? Because then that makes classes like Shaman, Demon Hunter,
Blood Elf,
Priest, Blood Elf, Priest, Blood Elf. I mean, there's so many classes with Purge, right?
So there's a lot of classes with Purge.
Hunter.
There's not a lot of classes with spammable Purge, though, right?
Okay, well then don't troll.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I don't know. I feel like that would completely negate the affix. I think it would need to be something like duration, like Squishy said, like 15-second window where it can fall off.
Squishy said the Purge. He told me that
really?
told me that he didn't like the 15-second duration.
Yeah,
one.
because you would just kite it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think kiting makes you have to actually deal with the affix, right? Like if you brought a massive spell, then you would literally just burn all the little mobs and then instantly massive spell like the 3 big mobs or whatever.
Oh yeah, okay. It depends on if it's dispellable 1 stack at a time, like Soul Fetish is, or if it's dispellable all stacks at once. That's what I was thinking.
You dispel 1 stack at a time. Wait a second.
Okay, 1 stack at a time would be a lot better. Yeah. I like that.
Wait. I think that Dratus and I understood it as like you dispel only 1.
It definitely is a very different affix. Yeah. Necrotic, I think Necrotic could do with a longer duration that doesn't get refreshed on stack application. I've pitched this one before, but it's like it's a 20-second debuff. It stacks up while you've got it, but it doesn't actually, like, when you get a new stack, it doesn't increase the duration, and that way you have these kind of natural moments where it falls off and you can get heals.
Who is Necrotic fun for? Like, that is just like the least fun affix, I feel like.
Nobody. It's awful for the healer. You can't heal your tank.
Protection.
It's awful
Paladin.
for the tank.
Oh, really?
Dwarf Protection Paladin.
There we go.
Kyrian Dwarf Protection Paladin. You just have, like, you never have a Necrotic debuff on you.
I see.
I think it's just bad that only one tank really has like a base kit of just dropping Necrotic in any situation at will.
Brewmaster Monk?
Yeah, well, Brewmaster does have a great kit against it, but in some situations you're not able to kite or you're not able to just run away,
Brewmaster is uniquely skilled at Tyrannical Necrotic, and Paladin's uniquely skilled at Fortified Necrotic, but...
That's true, yeah. But I don't think it should be that polar. I think it should have more counterplay options, like, other stuff we talked about that's good design, like the Samrek, the Fear guy from Awaken, has multiple counterplay.
Yeah, that's the problem with Necrotic is that, like, 2 or 3 times per dungeon, there's just these pulls where it's a huge challenge that, like, doesn't have a solution apparent for a lot of comps, where it's like, all right, there's lieutenant mobs here that will not be CCable, that, like, chase you down.
What Necrotic was dispellable?
I don't think the solution to the affixes is just make them do nothing if you have the right purge or dispel for them. I don't think that interacts with the affix or in a different way from the other affixes.
I agree that I feel like you should actually have to kite out Necrotic. was just offering up a different alternative.
Because that's like Reaping, right? Reaping had that mechanic on the tank, right, where the tank got stacks and you dispelled them. But like,
I think the dispellable thing's good. I would like that. It doesn't force the group to have to deal with the time loss of the tank spreading out all the mobs and then letting their melee die to all the anti-kite mechanics that are in Shadowlands, by the way. They're still there. And it doesn't like the fact that all the BFA dungeons have mechanics that force you to kite and also mechanics that kill your group if you do kite, I think is so bad. Like
it should only be a disease dispel though.
Dude, okay. All right, check this out. Every time Necrotic gets applied to you, it picks a random debuff type to go on your tank.
Okay, no, that's awful.
That's the
I think
move.
the magic dispel, just like Reaping, is actually perfect, honestly. I hadn't thought about that before, but like having a dynamic affix where your tank and healer have to work together to dispel at the right time and manage necrotic stacks instead of just forcing you to not take any healing at all and letting your group suffer and running away forever. I think that's a much better option.
Okay, I may be coming around to it. Next question, and our last of the show, comes from Fuzza in Twitch chat. Trell, what do you think of the Night Fae Covenant change for Brewmaster? And for those of us, I know what this was, but for those of us in the audience, for those in the audience that don't know exactly what happened, could you explain to them also what that was?
Oh yeah, so Night Fae Monk have the ability Phaline Stomp, and it puts like a random graphic in front of your character.
Oh, okay,
it's like
I do know this. Yeah.
And before you have to be like standing on the Phaline so that you can get the resets on the ability itself. But before it was just placing the beginning of the animation like 5 yards in front of your character. So you'd have to like walk through the pack you were tanking just to get to the Phaline that you just put down. And it just like wasn't great. But now it just drops on your feet so you can have the aura wherever you place it at the beginning. I don't think it's still very good for Brewmaster. It does very little damage. It's basically just keeping up your Covenant buff. In this case, it's just more mastery. I think most classes get more mastery from their Covenant buff.
Yeah, it's very much it's quality of life, right? Like you're not gonna have to like step back before Phaline stomping or step forward after Phaline stomping every time.
Yeah. I mean, it is like a nice filler for GCDs where you don't have anything going on. Now that we can't use spinning crane kick because you can't dodge during it, lol. That'd be a good option for that. But I think other covenants are still better. It is a long way off, though, so I'm really not sure. Yeah, they removed that last build. Like, what? The spinning crane kick is on Brewmaster, and it was like a perfect spell to fill for AoE threat when you're between keg smashes. And then they just added you can't dodge during it.
Dude, I feel like
swipe for Guardian Druid.
Which just make it so while you're swiping you can't dodge as well, or you make swipe take you out of bear form. That's
yeah, pretty much, right?
Yeah, dude, I think that's gonna catch so many beginners as well, because like if you're a new Brewmaster, you see that you have this button, you're gonna press it in AoE, right? And then you're just like you're not gonna understand why you're dying so much. Is that like randomly this ability doesn't let you dodge like it feels like it should? Anyways.
Yeah, I think it's so ridiculous. It's not even the tooltip either. There's no way of knowing.
Yeah, those kind of opaque things feel like real gotchas for players that are new to specs. Anyways, that's about it for our episode this week. Hope you enjoyed this look at what is happening to M+ in Shadowlands. We'll, of course, keep it updated. And we'll talk more about the Keystone Masters tournament and all of those sorts of things in coming episodes. I think one thing to do right before we get to the end is it looks like there's a new patron name on our list here, which got added between when I read it and now. So to make sure that we don't miss anybody, thanks Nix as well for your patronage. That will be all for us though this week. Later, everybody.
See ya.